Welcome to the Rouge River Watershed Plan Fall 2025 Engagement Presentation, presented by Melanie Randolph, Project Manager on TRCA's Watershed Planning and Reporting Team. Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Rouge River Watershed. This presentation will provide you with information on the watershed planning process and the development of the new Rouge River Watershed Plan and its timelines. It will also provide some information about the watershed and what makes it special, as well as some of the issues facing the watershed. To start off, I wanted to show a map of the Greater Toronto Area. As we can see, there are extensive urban areas, but also visible on the map are the watercourses, valleys, and stream corridors and green spaces throughout the landscape. Across the GTA and within TRCA's jurisdiction in particular, we have 9 different watercourses that all flow into Lake Ontario, and each of these represent a watershed. So what is a watershed? A watershed is an area that is drained by a river or watercourse and its tributaries. So basically, an area of land that catches rain and snow that drains or seeps into a marsh, stream, river, lake, or groundwater. In the Toronto region, all watersheds are river watersheds, with the exception of the waterfront, which drains into Lake Ontario. Everywhere on the landscape is part of a watershed, and it's important to know which watershed you live in. Watersheds deliver important benefits, including providing safe drinking water and food, and helping to reduce flooding and erosion, producing energy and supplying water for agriculture, industry, and homes, and promoting a healthy water cycle and providing habitat for plants and animals. This map shows the 9 watersheds in TRCA's jurisdiction, as well as the Lake Ontario waterfront shown in dark purple. In this presentation, I'll be talking about one of the largest watersheds within TRCA's jurisdiction, the Rouge River Watershed, shown in teal on the map. Since watercourses and watersheds don't recognize the edges of cities or municipalities, it is important that we manage environmental issues on a watershed scale, and this is recognized by our provincial plans and policies. It is part of TRCA's mandate to undertake watershed-based programs to protect people and property from natural hazards such as flooding, and to conserve our natural resources for economic, social, and environmental benefits. You can use the QR code to access our watershed management webpage, where you can click on the map that looks like this one and search for your address to see which watershed you're in. Now that we know what a watershed is, let's talk about watershed planning. Watershed planning is typically undertaken for 2 purposes. 1, to assess and understand the overall conditions or health of the watershed, and 2, to identify measures to protect, restore, and enhance the health of a watershed. It's important to note that watershed plans do not make land use decisions, but the data, modeling, and evaluation included in a watershed plan help to develop a set of management actions that can be used by municipalities to inform land use and infrastructure planning decisions. Municipalities are required by various provincial plans and policies, including the Provincial Planning Statement and the Greenbelt Plan, to complete watershed plans for the watersheds within their boundaries. It is recommended to work with conservation authorities to help prepare watershed plans, and TRCA has a long history of watershed planning and partners with municipalities to develop watershed plans, including the ones shown on this slide. As part of TRCA's watershed planning activities, we look at the various components shown in this figure, such as land, water, biodiversity, urban, and agricultural communities, to develop, implement, and report on strategic and integrated watershed plans. This holistic approach is the basis for the watershed planning we do at TRCA to ensure healthy watersheds and communities. 4 key areas are analyzed as we develop watershed plans, including water resources, natural heritage, water quality, and natural hazards. For water resources, we look at things like the water resource system, which includes stream, lake, and groundwater conditions, as well as aquatic habitat and species, and in-stream barriers to fish movement. Natural heritage includes the natural heritage system, which is made up of wetlands, forests, meadows, and valley lands. And we also look at the urban forest, terrestrial or land-based habitat, and sensitive species. We will also examine water quality in the watershed, as well as natural hazards, including flooding and erosion. The implications of land use change, climate change, various policy directions, and interventions like restoration, stormwater management, and gray and green infrastructure and low-impact development implementation are also an integral part of our watershed plans. In terms of the watershed planning process, this slide will explain the 4 key stages of the process. Stage 1 includes preparation by reviewing existing data, collecting data to fill any gaps, preparation of preliminary mapping, and initial scoping, including the development of an engagement strategy. Stage 2 involves characterizing and identifying the current conditions or health of the watershed and identifying the key issues that exist in the watershed. Stage 3 examines the implications of various potential future land use and climate change scenarios to understand how the conditions of the watershed may change in the future. It also explains the potential impact of different enhancement options like the ones mentioned in the previous slide. Stage 4 involves developing the management framework and actions that will identify ways to protect, enhance, and restore the watershed. This stage also includes the preparation of the draft watershed plan that is posted for public review prior to being finalized. Once the watershed plan is finalized and approved, implementation and implementation tracking can begin. Monitoring and evaluation of watershed conditions takes place on an ongoing basis to see if the watershed conditions are improving or not. Management actions in the watershed plan can be adapted as necessary based on monitoring results. Engagement with the public, stakeholders, and First Nations and Indigenous communities that are not part of the steering committee takes place throughout the watershed planning process. Now I'll talk a bit more about the development of the new watershed plan for the Rouge River Watershed. The last watershed plan for the Rouge was completed in 2007. The new plan will use the latest science and data to inform municipal land use and infrastructure planning and will reflect the changes to the provincial planning policy framework related to watershed planning since the last plan. The development of the watershed plan will be a 4-year process based on the stages outlined in the previous slide. We have now completed stage 1. And during that stage, we established 2 committees to help develop the new watershed plan. We have an internal technical committee made up of TRCA staff who will conduct all the analysis and modeling for the various watershed components. We also have a steering committee made up of our partner municipalities in the watershed, participating First Nations, and Rouge National Urban Park, a key stakeholder in the watershed. These committees will guide the development of the watershed plan throughout all stages. We are currently in the watershed characterization stage, and this will continue until spring 2026. Once we've completed stage 2, we'll move on to stage 3, which will begin in early 2026 and continue into 2027. We'll then move into stage 4, which will take us into 2028. Our first engagement opportunity is taking place right now, and we will have additional engagement opportunities to obtain your input during the other stages as well. The next engagement will take place likely in the spring of 2026 to provide the results of the initial engagement that's happening now and the results of our watershed characterization, and to obtain feedback on the draft future management scenarios. More details will be posted on the project webpage and will be communicated as we have done for this first engagement session. The Canada Water Agency has provided funding through the Great Lakes Freshwater Ecosystem Initiative for TRCA to explore the feasibility of incorporating the nearshore environment into their watershed planning process. So using the Rouge River Watershed as a case study, TRCA will attempt to make land-to-lake connections and explicitly link watershed planning to nearshore water quality and ecosystem health under current and future potential land use and climate scenarios. Through this work, a watershed water quality model will be developed to characterize current water quality, like we do in all of our watershed plans. However, for this project, we will use machine learning, a form of AI, to connect these model results and data collected from the nearshore of Lake Ontario, such as that shown in the area circled in red. The goal of this project is to utilize large volumes of data from various sources to help understand the connection between the watershed exports, such as the sediment plumes seen in this photo, and the lake's response. This information will then be used to model and understand how both watershed and lake health changes under future scenarios of land use and climate, and it will help identify priority sub-watersheds to target for improving water quality in the watershed that will also reduce stress in the nearshore of Lake Ontario. Now we'll move on to some details about the Rouge River Watershed and what makes it so special. The Rouge is one of the larger watersheds in TRCA's jurisdiction at over 33,500 hectares and has 7 sub-watersheds. Sub-watersheds are a way of breaking the watershed into parts based on various branches and tributaries. As we can see on the map, the sub-watersheds we're using for the Rouge River Watershed Plan are Upper Rouge, Bursey and Bruce Creek, Upper Little Rouge, Middle Rouge and Beaver Creek, Robinson and Mount Joy Creek, Lower Little Rouge, and Lower Rouge. The watershed lies within one single-tier municipality, the City of Toronto, 2 upper-tier municipalities, York Region and Durham Region, and 5 lower-tier municipalities as listed here. The areas for each municipality within the watershed are shown in this table as well. The Rouge River is Chisipi in Anishinaabe, which translates to Big Creek. The Rouge River has a very rich human history. As a home for First Nations and Indigenous peoples along its banks, as an ancient transportation route known as the Eastern Branch of the Carrying Place Trail used by Indigenous peoples and then early European explorers and settlers, and as a site for many of Toronto and region's post-European settlement homes and industries. It will be important to consider the Rouge's rich cultural significance and recreational value alongside the more technical aspects as we prepare the watershed plan. Shown here is a map of the different treaties within the Rouge watershed. As we can see, the Rouge watershed is within the Williams Treaties lands and Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase. There are 7 nations that signed the Williams Treaties, including Alderville, Beausoleil, Chippewas of Georgina Island, Chippewas of Rama, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Mississaugas of Scugog Island. Treaty 13 was signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and they also have an active land claim within Rouge Park. This has been in the news recently as they are close to reaching a settlement after over 200 years of negotiations. When preparing these watershed plans, we have a responsibility to recognize the important role that First Nations had and still have in shaping these lands. We strive to have representation from each of these First Nations on our steering committee, so we ensure that they are involved from the very onset of the project and that their knowledge, opinions, and input are considered throughout the process. We currently have representation from 6 of these 8 nations on our steering committee. We also invite those non-participating nations, as well as nations with traditional territories, to be involved, and we keep them engaged at project milestones. This map helps to highlight the diverse characteristics of the watershed. While looking at this ortho image, you can see the very urban areas that look gray in the southern and central portions of the watershed. Shown in green is the Rouge National Urban Parklands. In the northern portions of the watershed, we see more rural areas, natural cover, and green space. The upper portions of the watershed are within the Oak Ridges Moraine and the Greenbelt. The watershed also contains different ecosystems that support a variety of diverse habitats and species. For example, the mouth of the Rouge has open water and wetland areas and a long beach shoreline area. Rouge National Urban Park has many wetland, forest, meadow, and ravine areas, like the area shown from the Vista Trail by the Toronto Zoo. Bruce's Mill Conservation Park is in the northern portion of the watershed in Markham and contains forest, successional, meadow, and wetland habitat that supports many different species of plants and animals. You can also even enjoy the treetop trekking adventures when you visit this park. TRCA's monitoring teams track the health of the watershed through long-term species habitat and monitoring, and this slide will highlight some of the unique plant and wildlife species that call the Rouge River Watershed home. In 2022, bobolink was recorded by a TRCA biologist south of 407 and west of Rouge Park for the first time in over 8 years. Local and continental populations of this species at risk have declined in recent years through loss of its meadow breeding habitat. Finding this bird in a managed meadow in the heart of Markham demonstrates that preservation and conservation of sensitive bird breeding habitat can be successful, even in highly urbanized areas. Little brown myotis is a small bat species and weighs about as much as a loonie. Like other bat species, their numbers are declining due to loss of habitat, decreasing numbers of insects, as well as the introduction of a disease known as white nose syndrome from Europe. Bats depend on forest habitats, which highlights the importance of conserving the high-quality forest habitat found within the Rouge River watershed. The Rouge River watershed provides some of the last remaining habitat for Jefferson salamander in all of Canada. Actions are being taken to protect this species in the Rouge, including road closures during salamander migration periods. Knotty pondweed is a native regional species of conservation concern discovered at the mouth of the Rouge River in 2022. Very few observations have been reported over the past few decades, making this a noteworthy find. This species is extremely sensitive to contamination and changes in hydrology. Blanding's turtle is a species that has inhabited the Rouge Valley for thousands of years. They have a lifespan of up to 100 years. Unfortunately, as few as 7 Blanding's turtles remained in Rouge National Urban Park prior to 2014. In response to the declining population, Parks Canada and the Toronto Zoo began a long-term Blanding's turtle reintroduction project in 2014 and has since released hundreds of baby turtles into the park. The red-side dace is a small, colorful fish that lives in the Rouge watershed. It is listed as endangered by both federal and provincial governments. Changes to its habitat, such as water quality and quantity, siltation, and the clearing of streamside vegetation are threatening the survival of this species. TRCA's restoration team works on restoring wetland, riparian, forest, and meadow habitat across the watershed to help increase natural cover and biodiversity. This slide gives one example of a restoration project that was completed in Catabocaconk Creek within Rouge National Urban Park in 2021 with funding provided by Parks Canada. This project included the restoration of a series of riverine floodplain wetland pockets to help improve natural hydrology and enhance wildlife habitat diversity. This project involved wetland, riparian, and forest restoration at key areas to create subtle grade changes in the floodplain to encourage water infiltration, slow runoff into the adjacent watercourse, and provide settling capacity for nutrients, sediments, and debris. This project saw the installation of over 3,650 native wetland, upland, and riparian trees and shrubs, as well as native wet meadow and cover crop seed to complement the wetland restoration work to help improve long-term stabilization of the soils. The site was also enhanced with 88 habitat structures such as basking logs, perching pools, and log tangles to provide wildlife refuge. You can visit these wetlands using the trail that is accessible to the public from the parking lot on the south side of Major Mackenzie Road between 9th Line and Reeser Road in Markham. We could not discuss the special places in the Rouge Watershed without discussing Rouge National Urban Park. Established on May 15, 2015, this is Canada's first national urban park and one of the largest urban parks in all of North America. The assembly of forests, creeks, farms, meadows, and beaches provides homes for more than 1,000 plant species, 247 bird species, 73 fish species, 44 mammal species, and 27 reptile and amphibian species. The park also has an extensive trail system and many beautiful places to visit. The Rouge Beach and Marsh is one of those beautiful places and is the park's busiest. Rouge Marsh is one of the largest remaining coastal wetlands in all of Ontario. Bob Hunter Memorial Park is another beautiful place to enjoy the park with its large expanses of meadow habitat with plenty of biodiversity. This is a fantastic place to see butterflies in the summer and early fall, and also has trails that lead into forested areas of the park. This future flagship visitor, learning, and community center will welcome people to the Rouge National Urban Park and help foster understanding, appreciation, and stewardship of the park. It will create a space where visitors and residents can learn about the Indigenous, natural, cultural, and agricultural heritage of the park, and Parks Canada's role in protecting places from coast to coast to coast. Construction is currently underway with an expected opening date in 2027. This slide provides some information on land use within the watershed and how land use has changed over time. The maps on the right show the land uses, including urban cover in gray, rural cover in light yellow, and natural cover in dark green, and they also demonstrate the changes that have occurred from 2002 to 2012 to 2023. You can see that urban cover has increased quite a lot from 26% in 2002 to 36% in 2023. Rural cover has decreased from 48% to 38%, and natural cover has decreased slightly from 26% to 25.9%. Impervious cover, which is any surface in the landscape that can't effectively absorb or infiltrate water, such as driveways, roads, and parking lots, has also increased in the watershed from 23% in 2002 to 30% in 2023. So overall, urban areas are increasing, and rural and natural areas are decreasing across the watershed. This trend is likely to continue, which may have various implications on the watershed and its residents. Likewise, climate change is another important driver that will impact watershed health. Climate change describes a long-term change in average weather patterns over decades or longer. We have seen a dramatic increase in the concentration of heat-trapping greenhouse gases in the atmosphere in the last century caused by human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation. With changing weather patterns, we can expect warmer temperatures and extreme heat, drier conditions, more severe and frequent precipitation and storms, such as ice, snow, and windstorms, and more flooding. This figure shows, globally, the last 10 years have been the warmest on record, with 2024 being the warmest year in recorded history. Within the Toronto region, temperatures have also been on the rise. By the end of the century, the Toronto region is expected to warm by 5 degrees Celsius, which will lead to more variable and extreme weather. This figure was developed by the TRCA Durham region on the Ontario Climate Consortium, but applies to other regions in the GTA, including the Rouge River Watershed. It describes some of the important impacts of climate change, including the loss of wildlife habitat and biodiversity, due in part to an increase in invasive species, extreme heat that poses health risks and can be worsened by the urban heat island effect, which makes urban areas hotter than surrounding natural areas, risks to public safety, property, and infrastructure due to an increase in flooding and erosion from more frequent and severe storms, and the potential for more power outages. Shown here are some of the ways to mitigate and adapt to climate change, including energy efficiency, sustainable transportation such as more public transit and transition to electric cars, water conservation, flood protection, and infrastructure upgrades to handle the increased precipitation. We'll need to ensure we consider the impacts of climate change as part of the Rouge River Watershed Plan and identify ways to mitigate and adapt to climate change so we can ensure our watersheds, including the Rouge, are healthy in the future. After hearing about all of that, you may be wondering how you can get involved in various TRCA events and activities that help keep our watersheds healthy. Our community learning team delivers programs focused on natural and cultural heritage, habitat creation, and community science that engage the public with environmental initiatives. They work in partnership with residents, schools, community groups, and municipalities to deliver these programs. You can visit this QR code to visit TRCA's Get Involved webpage to learn how you can get involved in a variety of community events, including nature walks, community plantings, litter cleanups, and various workshops. There are different types of events available, such as family programs, volunteer opportunities, and even school visits. The website has information about how to subscribe to get event updates from TRCA and how to find out what events are happening in your community. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. This slide provides some information about how to provide your input for the new Rouge River Watershed Plan. We encourage you to complete our online survey using this QR code. You can also access the information from the project webpage at trca.ca/rouge. Through this survey, we're hoping to attain your input on the important watershed words and themes that will help guide the development of the vision statement, on the key watershed issues, and on any climate or weather-related changes or impacts that you have experienced or observed. Note that the survey will be active until Monday, November 3rd. You can also email us at rouge@trca.ca with any questions or concerns. You can keep informed of all engagement activities as we develop the watershed plan by visiting the project webpage, and you can also subscribe through our webpage so we can email you with any updates. Thank you again for your interest in the Rouge River Watershed Plan.